who have MS state, I have MS, but it doesn't have me. However, you see it as I have MS and it's changed me. Brandee Hicks is an experienced public health practitioner working in the field for more than a decade, as well as a disability inclusion and accessibility advocate. As a public health practitioner, she has supported a variety of behavioral health and disability related programs. And it is in her role as an advocate that she uses her public health experience and keen eye for identifying community needs that she has created the blog Be Out the Box. Brandee is always seeking opportunities to provide insight to support underserved populations and ensure quality healthcare experiences for everyone. She practiced this as a volunteer patient family advisor for the PFA network. MS activist engaging in legislative and policy activities, and she loves to participate in ad hoc market research panels and focus groups. As a co chair of her company's first Diverse Abilities Community and Allies Group, she aims to ensure that the agency not only upholds the tenets of the American Disabilities Act, but they go beyond to create an environment that is inclusive where everyone is valued and can thrive in the workplace. She currently launched Be Out the Box with the mission of changing the narrative surrounding people with disabilities, exposing gaps in community accessibility, and celebrating innovative solutions for creating environments supportive of all abilities. Hi, Brandee. How are you today this morning?
I'm good, Belinda. Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for taking time to talk with me about Be Out the Box. I'm excited for our fans to hear that. So before we get started, I want to ask the question: can you explain what you mean? It's not a cliche; it's a movement.
Not a cliche, it's a movement.
Yes.
Yeah, so, people always say, think outside the box, be out the box. And a lot of times they're thinking about people just sitting in the conference room thinking of ways to be different or trying to think of ways to be radical and change, which it is partially that, but for me, it's more of a call to action. So it's twofold with be out the box. Be out the box is like be Brandee out the box, live outside of the norm. I'm usually contained and very private with what's going on in my life and things like that. So with this, it's me sharing my story and being more transparent about what's happening with me around multiple sclerosis and disabilities and that sort of thing. So it's a call to action for myself as well as calling out the community to do better around accessibility and just actually don't just be out the box in your mind, but also just live it out loud and expand the boundaries. And it's safe in the box. It's standards. It's contained, but push the boundaries, push the limits, and do something to actually show that you are living that way.
What can you give us an example of something you've done that pushed yourself outside the box?
Well, me talking to you today is outside of the box for me. Me starting my blog to talk about my journey and my experience is definitely outside of the box for me. Um, and then also just going out to, places. It's a change when if you have to use mobility tools like canes and walking aids and things like that. That you have to decide whether or not you want to stay inside your house, whether you'll go out anyway, that sort of thing. So just continuing to live and not letting the constraints of society kind of just cage me in. And so that's me kind of living out loud and living out of the box.
Okay, excellent. On your website, you talked about how some people who have MS state, I have MS, but it doesn't have me. However, you see it as I have MS and it's changed me. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. So it's like a power play. I have MS, but it doesn't have me. And this sounds good, but for me, I can't speak for others, but for me, I would be completely lying if I didn't say that MS didn't have me some days. It definitely does. It's changed how my routine. I have to take in consideration like how much time I need to do certain things now. Am I tired? can I do jump up and go the way I used to? No, not really. So in my mind, it does kind of have me, but the whole thing is not for it to keep me or hold me down. So I love Zumba, right? And I used to go to Zumba a few times a week. I still love Zumba. So at this point, I can still do Zumba. I just have to think about how I'm going to do it. I may not be able to do it for a full hour today. I may have to do a seated version of Zumba. So just thinking of it differently. So I think about it as like that. It has changed me. So it's like I have MS. It has me. But now what? What are you going to do with that? Are you going to keep on moving or not? And it also has definitely changed just my perspective on life because I can no longer just go with the flow without seeing some of the things and the gaps in the community around just some of the things that people should just be able to do that they have to think more about. It's not just as simple as let me get on the bus, or let me just go inside of this restaurant, or even let me open the door to a public restroom without struggling and thinking about how heavy it is. It just kind of just changes your mindset and opens, like I said, opens my eyes to just a different way of living. And with that, I see some things I want to change, and I want to use my voice to, impact that.
Excellent. In your opinion, what accommodations do restaurants um, need to ensure in order to serve all their customers comfortably?
Yeah, so restaurants, it's ideally in the best case scenario, people could think about accessibility before they even make a building, right? And so they can make sure it's enough space and that think the bathrooms are big enough, that sort of thing. But because that doesn't always happen, we have to kind of deal with what we're working with, whether it's because of the location or real estate costs, or sometimes people just don't really think about it. But they do need to think about maintenance, I would say, particularly around things like ramps and curb cutouts, like trying to get into the buildings. I've seen some really raggedy, rickety ramps, and it's like, who wants to roll over that? I don't. Do you want to walk over that? That sort of thing. So just being mindful about keeping everything maintained for the customers when possible, just having a path where people, because I'm speaking through the lens of mobility, because there's so many different types of disabilities. So having a path where people can actually walk, roll through, or use their cane to get through, they don't feel like they're going to trip over people and that sort of thing when possible, and to at least to get inside the restaurant and a path to go to the restroom. And then with the restroom, I think I talk about bathrooms, public bathrooms all the time because it's the worst. Because they're already the worst, right?
Right,
They're already
right,
the worst. Nobody
right,
wants to have to use the public bathroom.
right.
They don't. And so then when you go to it, if you have a walker or you have a wheelchair and you get inside and there's a laundry basket sitting in the middle of the handicap stall, because that's happened, or there's a door, I'm sorry, not a door, but like a little table sitting on the outside of it, so you can't even open the door all the way. That's a problem. So it's like, do I try to walk, to get to the restroom? Can I hold it? That sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the kind of things that they need to just be really mindful of. You can't just say you're checking off these ADA standards. You meet these requirements, but then you're creating all these barriers for people that do actually come and your customers to be safe and just comfortable. And then one other thing, this is not necessarily about accessibility per se, but just the experience for people with disabilities. I would also encourage them to do some type of disability etiquette or sensitivity training, right? Because people get a little bit uncomfortable. They don't know how to respond. And so people start asking questions that they probably shouldn't be asking, or doing things that shouldn't really be happening. Or one of the things that I hate that happens is that people start to act like I'm invisible and start to just ask other people, like, will she be okay sitting here? Will she be okay doing that? Okay, she is still here. So you can
Right.
talk to me, be normal, be natural, treat me like anybody else. And so I think just with any other diversity training or any other type of just customer service training, it'd be great if they had a module around disabilities too, because just be normal.
Right.
People get weird, but be normal. If they have the conversation, I think people will be more aware and knowing how to deal with it. That's all.
Okay. What kind of training does Be Out the Box offers?
Yeah, definitely. So we will be able to come in and talk to the employees about how to respond better to their employees that have disabilities, and just create overall awareness of the disability culture, because they say 1 in 4 people have a disability anyway. So chances are your employee may not have a disability, but someone that they are directly related to or close to has one. So it's just something to keep in mind, and just a big point of awareness to build within the company. And I definitely can come in and talk about that, as well as do focus groups with the company and with other employees around how they feel the environment is at that company, and doing some type of assessments around things that could be better around the culture, and some improvements and gaps and accommodations and needs. So that's something I would love to come in and do for you guys.
Excellent. Do you also, I know you mentioned that you're on Instagram. Do you also do like the other videos like this, or live trainings or coaching sessions with the client? Would you be willing to do a coaching session via Zoom?
Yeah, definitely via Zoom, Skype, Adobe Connect, any of the platforms. I've been experiencing a lot of them. So yeah, so definitely it can do it remotely, especially during this time. I know people are not always doing things in person, or if you live in another state, I'm in Georgia, but if you're somewhere else, I can do that too. So definitely, we have technology at our disposal, so we need to use it, and I'm really experienced with that. So yeah.
Excellent. How would you? So someone is new to the understanding of mobility accommodation. Can you tell them some things that to point them in the right direction for? So I'm a new business. I own a restaurant. What are some? Just pretend that I own a restaurant and I'm a new business. What to make sure that I am being that my organization, my company is accessible to every customer. What are some suggestions that you could give?
I think they can always start with the basics, right? Which is the ADA. So I would go to the ADA website and get the basics of like what the standards are around having. There are measurements for how the door frame should be this wide. You should have a curb cut out in this spot. You should have a bathroom that with handrails that's this high off the ground or this close. That's the standard, right? That's the basics. But the whole push of be out the box is to even do more than that, right? And so I would say use my BFF Google, and actually Google accommodations and things in your workplace or restaurants that you things that people need to make their experience better. And one thing that I heard on a call recently that I thought was really interesting is they contracted a group to come in and help them like kind of just talk through mobility, but they also like told like certain leadership people they had to use a walker or a wheelchair for a day or two, I think it was, to kind of see like what limitations they had going around the office or around the restaurant, trying to, if they had to maneuver in a walker or using a walker or a cane or something like that. Would they be able to get to the bathroom? I mean, some of these older restaurants, they have like bathrooms downstairs,
Mm-hmm.
no elevator. So please don't have to use the potty while you're there, right? So, and that's something that people with disabilities often plan for. I know I do. I want to know, like, how is this set up before I go, and how much time do I need between my last potty break before I may have to go again, And so, yeah, I think that just, like I said, start with the ADA website and looking at that. Google just Google accessibility in restaurants and that sort of thing. And then also just kind of, if you don't like literally get in a wheelchair and roll around the restaurant to see, just kind of do a walkthrough where you keep it in mind, like, oh, I don't know, because it's a kind of a 2 inch like step up on this. Like, can a wheelchair get up that? Maybe it can, maybe it can't. So just kind of just being more mindful as you're going through.
You brought up the ADA, and for some people who may not even know what that ADA stands for, can you explain what does ADA stand for?
Yeah, Americans with Disabilities Act. And it was passed in 1990. Actually, just celebrated the 30th anniversary last year, July 26th. We celebrated the anniversary of that, and it just states that there's certain accommodations that places must offer for people with disabilities to be able to just have the same access and rights as others. And I think there's a lot of different like topics of in within the ADA. So they do talk about workplace accommodations. Like jobs are supposed to offer reasonable accommodations for folks. They do talk about like the public accommodations. And then I think 508 compliance, which is separate from ADA. It's like an addendum, but that talks about accessible documents or web accessibility for, like, if you work for CDC or you access a CDC or a government website, people who have low vision or some type of disability, they should be able to still access that website under the 508 compliance review as part of ADA. So I think that's it's awesome because it definitely has allowed us to get some of the things that we need so far, and it has, like I said, it's a standard. The enforcement of the ADA is something that we are still working on because people do get away with some of the things that they don't do. Like I talk about cracked sidewalks a lot, or cracked ramps. Like, you have a ramp, check, but it's cracked. So let me take your check away. So that kind of thing is just trying to make sure that we are keep maintaining the standards and also going about beyond and above that.
You said currently, at in addition to Be Out the Box, you're also working with an employer, and you said that you are a co-chair for the company's first diverse abilities community and allies group. What is your goal for that? What is your goal in that role for that to be successful?
Yes, I'm excited about it. It's very new at our company, and I'm surprised that it took us so long to get one there. But it's okay. We have it now. And so, with that, the goal is, well, my goal, I can't speak for the company as a whole, but one of my reasons that I wanted to be involved in it is because I wanted to just increase awareness and within the company around disabilities, but also just, I think it starts with also just having a culture that's just, it's commonplace. Like, certain things are standard. We just, ADA standards, we have them, but we also have company standards, and this is just what you expect. Like, if you come on one of our webinars, you will be able to have a transcript or access closed caption, no questions asked. If you come to one of our facilities, you will be able to get into a accessible bathroom without, like when I was in the office, I can't even imagine trying to go back to the office right now, or that office, they've moved since then, using a wheelchair. I don't know which bed. I would have had to probably use the elevator to go downstairs to the main floor, because the bathroom on the floor that I was on, is no way. Like, just because, like, the hallway was narrow, it's just crazy, just the setup. So I just need people to kind of just, with awareness, you decide, you start to see the deficits, you start to see the gaps, and so it's to close the gaps, you need to know they're there. Mm-hmm. And so that's my role. My goal is to just talk about it, and hopefully we can have some resources towards it. If leadership is behind us, and we can start to just kind of shift it and close the gaps.
I remember we talked about this a couple of years ago, that you had a doctor's appointment, and when you went in, the bed didn't lower and raise. Mm-hmm. And I remember telling you that I never thought about that prior to our conversation. Talk about a little about that and accommodation.
Yes, definitely. Thanks for that question. It's one of my favorite topics. I love to talk about the doctor because, well, in a previous lifetime, I wanted to be a doctor.
Oh, wow.
But now that as a public health practitioner, I realize how important it is to have preventative care and ongoing health care. And I also read recently that, like, people with disabilities are 4 times more likely to have poor or fair health care or health status,
right,
than people without disability.
Right.
And that's for a number of reasons. But one is because people don't want to go to the doctor, or they don't feel like they can go to the doctor. And I really feel like, I believe that everybody should have a right to go to the doctor. And people hear that and they're like, wait a minute, are people prohibiting people with disabilities from going to the doctor?
Right.
No, that's not what's happening. But it's about access and ease of access and decreasing the barriers. So if it's a place that you already don't really want to go to anyway,
right,
you don't want to go to the gynecologist,
right,
you don't want to go to the dentist,
right.
But if you decide to go, if they can't accommodate you, if you can barely get into the room, if you can't get on the table, if the X-ray machines are not accessible, that sort of thing, if there's stigma and discrimination there, like all the types of things that you might have to deal with, why would you go? You probably will make as many excuses as possible to deter yourself from. Table is a thing for me. I talk about that a lot because I think the average the examination table is it's almost 3 feet off the ground, right? Mm-hmm. But then the average wheelchair is about 17, 18 inches off the ground. So that's a step up. That's that's a distance. So just thinking about having to get up on the table, some people who use wheelchairs can still maybe stand up and get up. but everybody can't.
Right.
And so how are they going to get there? Whether or not they have somebody there to help them. Are we going to rely on the nurses to shift them? I mean, I don't know, because then that's the thing. Like, who's going to be responsible for those back pains and those things like that? Because everybody's not trained to deal with that.
Right.
So it just, to me, would make sense if there are more adjustable tables. And I'm so excited because my gynecologist, they have that, and a lot of doctors don't though, and it just seems like it should be a standard, because I think about it from a point of view of someone with mobility limitation. What about elderly people,
Right.
people with dwarfism, or people that are pregnant, or what if I came to the doctor that day because I have like vertigo or something? Do I need to be climbing up on the table?
Right.
And to me, it just makes sense. It's just the obvious. So yeah, the doctor's offices, I think they definitely have a lot that they need to do around accessibility. And I mean, even just, I mean, my lane is mobility, but just thinking about like the forms that we have to fill out, to even sign away whatever our lives to let them just treat us,
right,
and to bill our insurance, like the small print. Like, what if I have low vision? Are there alternative documents that I can read for that? If I have cognitive issues, is it? So it's just something that we definitely need to start to think about, because the health of people is suffering because they don't have the support they need when they do decide to actually go to the doctor, and so that's difficult.
What so in the past, you've experienced that, not your current doctor, but you've experienced the bed not. So what was the outcome for that? For you?
Right.
Well, did you have to leave?
I have a very strong husband.
Okay.
And he was able to help, and everybody doesn't have that. Not to mention, that's a lot to put on somebody else. It also can be embarrassing, right? I mean, particularly talking about gynecologists. I mean, right. It can be for any doctor, but my first experience with this, and one of the reasons I really talk about this so much, is because I'm thinking about the gynecologist. Mm-hmm. This is one of the doctors nobody really wants to go to, and right. You have to unrobe, you have to take off your clothes, right. And then you're trying to transfer it onto a chair and onto a table and all of that. It's a lot going on. But I mean, because I really value preventative care and things like that, and I know how important it is, I go through it anyway. But I know everybody wouldn't, and I'm not gonna act like I just wanted to. I remember the first time I had to deal with it, I called the nurse and I was like, "So how are you gonna help me? What's gonna happen? And right. Can this, can I use the table?" And she's like, "Oh, sure, yeah." And I don't think, I mean, people don't know how to respond. And I mean, of course, she shouldn't turn me away. She can't really say, "No, don't come here." Right. But you kind of gotta be brave. And that's being out the box. Right. Be brave and try it anyway. And hopefully you have an experience that doesn't deter you enough from not going to the doctor again. But in some instances, it can. And I've also heard of people falling off the table, not necessarily just because they have mobility issues, but I read some things about like people falling off the table or missing that little step. That little right. short step that they pull out, very, very short. And they miss it. And then there has been lawsuits around that. And so that's the thing. And then there's usually no rails on the doctor table either. So it's kind of like, that's true. Just make them safer. Like the hospital beds, because I know people are like, wait, they do have rails. No, that's typically hospital beds. Right. Hospital beds, because they roll, they typically have the little railing on the side. But the average just examination table does not. So you just have to think about that. And I think that's something we can do a lot more about, just increasing awareness. And I know that there are grants and stipends around that too, so maybe some of the smaller practices would be able to get at least one table in their office to help folks.
Now let's switch to accommodations as it relates to employment. How do you feel employers need to be most aware of accommodations, and how would a potential employee ask for accommodations?
This is your wheelhouse, right? You can help me with this one, right? Because I've learned a lot from you regarding this. So, yeah, I think, well, employers, I mean, like restaurant owners, I think everybody just needs some more awareness, right? And I would say with employers, first and foremost, is to kind of keep their limiting beliefs and some of their thoughts and prejudices to themselves, and kind of just wait for the person to ask for accommodations, or to say if they have limitations in doing something, because I think that's the stigma and that's a hesitation for a lot of people with disabilities around disclosing that they need help or support or that they have a disability, is because they're afraid that people are going to say, oh, well, you're not going to be able to travel, or oh, you're going to cost too much money to do this, or you can't do that, because they just make assumptions and they don't know. And in most cases, people who haven't even dealt with anybody needing those accommodations before they even make those assumptions. So it's amazing to me. But in any case, yes, I think that a lot of people just need to take some awareness. But yeah, there are so many different types of support that people can need. It may be something like just a screen reader, like, or if you have like low vision. One thing that someone at my previous job talked about was around using closed caption for meetings, like Zoom meetings and things like that. And sometimes I think one thing with people from this perspective of someone with a disability to be mindful of is also kind of be flexible, because they may not have the funds to have someone on Zoom all the time, but then they may be able to provide you with a transcript of the meeting for you to read later. So just kind of being like creative with options and thinking about it that way, I think that'll be good. But yeah, and then also thinking about the owners or the managers being willing to kind of adjust hours. I know that's another accommodation that people ask about. Like, I may be like very, very excited and able to work in the morning, but then I have like a lull around right after lunch. And so maybe need to work later into the evening. So maybe being open to that kind of thing. So that's what I would suggest and just having a conversation. But as far as a potential employee and how they should ask, that's where it gets hard, because really more the hard part is not just asking. Asking is not the hard part. The timing, right? I think the timing of when you ask, especially if it's a new place. So I was already in my position for quite some time before I had to ask to switch to work 100% from home. Prior to COVID, I had to ask for that a few years ago. And so they had already known, they already knew my work ethic. They already knew me. It wasn't a problem. Not to mention, luckily, I work at a company where a lot of people work remote 100% before now anyway. So I didn't have any problems.
So, Brandee, can you tell me, how can people contact you?
Oh, okay. So they can contact me via my website at www.b-outthebox.com, or I like Instagram, so you can DM me there, b_outthebox, or Gmail, b.outthebox at gmail.com. So I prefer the IG or the website. So www.b-outthebox.com.
Excellent.
And I'll definitely respond to them there.
Thank you again for taking time out to do this interview session with us. I know the people are going to be excited when they get to see this video. So thank you again. We'll appreciate that.